My name is Philipp Reichle and I'm presenting a market forecast for UV ultraviolet disinfection lamps for the next 10 years for the Australian market. What are UV disinfection lamps? UV disinfection lamps can be described as being very similar to conventional fluorescent lamps used for conventional lighting for housing and businesses. But instead of emitting light in the visible light range between 400 and 780 nanometers, UV disinfection lamps emit light in the UVC range between 200 and 280 nanometers, with the highest output at 254. 254 nanometer penetrates the DNA of microorganisms and humans and destroys the ability to reproduce the DNA, and hence it can be used for disinfection purposes. The UV lamps are either arranged in close reactors as shown in this example, or in open channels as shown in this picture. This arrangement allows the water to flow past the lamps and to receive the required UV radiation from the UV lamps in order to disinfect the water from waterborne pathogens. UV systems are used for various disinfection applications and can also be a part of water treatment processes, as illustrated by this process flow diagram. The system is in most cases placed at almost the very end of the process, just before release into a storage tank and chlorination. The significant advantage of UV disinfection technology as compared to chemical-based disinfection is that it's very powerful against parasites like Cryptosporidium and Giardia. There's no impact on the taste and odor of the water, and there's simply no creation of disinfection byproducts like trihalogen-methanes, which are known to be cancerogenic. The thing with UV lamps is that they are subject to a limited lifetime of 14,000 hours, which equals to 1.6 years. After these 14,000 running hours, the lamps need to be replaced. This gives us a market. An estimated 35,000 UV lamps are currently installed in the Australian market. This, with a life expectation of 1.6 years, gives us a demand of around 20,000 UV lamps per year. This results into a market size of 4.4 million Australian dollars. Australia is a 100% importer of UV disinfection lamps, and this mainly from Germany, Russia, and from China. Main reason for importing this technology is due to the high costs of manufacturing on Australian soil, and given the world market price, there would be no producer surplus available for local manufacturers, and hence nobody is doing it. If we have a look at the factors which could potentially change the demand for UV disinfection lamps here in Australia, we can list the following: implementation of more stringent regulations by the Environmental Protection Agency, consumer expectations on water quality and taste, population growth, new scientific findings, higher efficiency of UV lamps, and advancement and/or price reduction of alternative technologies, for example LEDs or chemical-based disinfection. If, for example, more and more people demand a higher water quality, we will most likely see an increase in demand on UV disinfection lamps. Or, if UV disinfection lamps become more efficient and less operational costs are required, the technology becomes more attractive, and we probably see an increase in demand. If we now have a look at the supply chain factors, we can list the following. A greater demand seen in the market will have an impact on the supply. Changes in price for the raw material, higher electricity costs, the reduction in price for production processes, for example new machines or robotic in general, and the advancement and/or price reduction of alternative technologies, for example LEDs or chemical-based disinfection. If we have a greater demand in Australia for UV lamps, it is very likely that the manufacturers will react and supply more lamps to Australia. Or, if there's a reduction in the cost for the actual production process, more and more companies could enter this industry, and we could see an increase in supply. The elasticity of the price for UV lamps is very much depending on the actual value proposition of the particular UV lamp. If, for example, a UV lamp is high efficient and I'm in an area with a high energy cost, for example in Adelaide, I can ask for a market premium. Whereas a lower efficiency means less money for the actual product is available, as more money will be needed for the actual operation. So there will most likely always be a market for a high price and a low price, very much depending on geographical conditions and the value proposition requirements. External factors which could impact the supply and demand. The disposal of the UV lamps, as they contain mercury. They are subject to special regulations. The education about the technology for the general public, for the engineers and the designers. And the desire to live more healthy. As we have learned earlier, UV disinfection does not create any byproducts like trihalogen methods, and hence considered to be more healthy. Let's have a look at the 10-year supply and demand forecast for Australia. The demand will change significantly. The regulations will change. Australia will adopt the long-term 2 surface water treatment rule from the US, which also include parasites, and an increase in UV lamps can be expected. The population growth will also impact the demand significantly. Over the last 10 years, Australia grew by 3.8 million, and it is expected that this will go even faster over the next 10 years. That simply means that there's more demand for water in general, and hence more water needs to be disinfected. People are higher educated and have more knowledge about disinfection and demand less disinfection byproducts, which probably also means that the demand in UV disinfection will go up. Technological advancement, higher efficient UV lamps, less operational costs make this technology simply more attractive, and an increase in demand can be seen. An increase in environmental friendliness. UV disinfection is considered as being the greenest among the available options and hence will gain more interest. If we have a look at the supply for the next 10 years, a higher demand will create a greater supply. A higher automation and less demand for skilled workers will increase manufacturer count. The advancement in LED technology will shift the focus from some suppliers towards new technologies. The advancement of LED technology is a threat for UV disinfection lamps, and probably at some stage the end of it, but this beyond 10 years. Overall, it can be stated that the demand for UV disinfection lamps in Australia will increase significantly, and so does the supply. Industry-related reports report a compound annual growth rate of 7.65% over the next 5 years. This extrapolated to 10 years gives us a market size in 2027 of 9.2 million Australian dollars, which equals an increase of 4.8 million Australian dollars over the next decade. As the market size is changing significantly, it's expected that the actual supply and demand curve change from something like this to a much less steep curve. A much greater supply will drive down the market price per lamp, as lower margins per item can be compensated by a much greater volume. All over, it can be stated that UV disinfection lamps will have a great future here in Australia. Thank you very much. Any questions? Please let me know.